I had been betrothed to Julian, the Marquis of Wuan, since childhood. Before he left for war, he told me, "Isabel, when I return, I will marry you with a grand procession." 3 years later, he returned victorious, and I, in my phoenix crown and embroidered gown, was carried to the Marquis's estate in a grand 8-bearer sedan chair. During the wedding ceremony, Julian brought out a memorial tablet. "Isabel, Rosaline was the one who saved my life. I promised to marry her and bring her tablet into the Julian family. Would it be all right if she joins us in the ceremony today?" I was grateful to Rosaline for saving his life, and since she was already gone, there was no need to argue. I nodded. The Marquis announced to the world that Rosaline was his official wife, and I was his co-wife. But 3 days after the wedding, Rosaline appeared outside the estate, claiming she had been rescued after falling from a cliff, and had not died. Only then did I realize it had all been a ploy. Rosaline was the illegitimate daughter of the Minister of Revenue, a status that would never have allowed her into the Marquis's household. After she moved in, Julian and Rosaline were inseparable, having children together. Meanwhile, I fell ill in a remote courtyard, and wasted away as the Marquis's estate flourished. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on my wedding day. The bride is ready for the sedan chair. The wedding attendant's cry startled me awake. I had been reborn back to the day I was to marry Julian. My mother placed the red veil over my head. "My Isabel is all grown up." I gripped her hand, a lump forming in my throat. In my past life, when he had taken me as a co-wife, my mother had coughed up blood and fallen ill, never to recover. After hearing of my death in that remote courtyard, my father's hair had turned white overnight. As the Marquis's estate prospered, no one cared about my death. Only my parents aged prematurely, burying their own child, and soon followed me to the grave. Now, looking at my mother, alive and well, I hugged her. "Mother, I will live a good life." She wiped away a tear. "What nonsense, of course. My daughter will live a good life. If Julian bullies you, just come home. Your father and I will stand up for you." My brother carried me on his back to the sedan chair. "Isabel, if you are wronged, come and tell me. I'll beat him up for you." Leaning on his back, I whispered a few words to him through the veil and got into the sedan chair. Julian led me into the wedding hall, each of us holding an end of a red silk ribbon. "First bow to heaven and earth," the master of ceremonies announced. "Wait," Julian interrupted. The guests watched as he brought out a memorial tablet. "Isabel, when I was at the border, a woman saved my life. She died saving me. I promised to marry her, to bring her into the Julian family's ancestral hall, so she would not be a lonely ghost. It is just a tablet. I want her to join us in the ceremony today. Can I give her the title of official wife?" Before I could speak, the guests erupted. "What is this? A wedding with a memorial tablet? But she is a savior, and she is dead. It is just a title. It doesn't matter." "But didn't you hear the Marquis?" he said. "Official wife? What does that make Miss Zhang? A concubine?" Hearing the guests chatter, Julian quickly explained to me. "Isabel, you are not a concubine. Don't worry, the tablet is just for the title. You are my co-wife. You are the only mistress of this household." Co-wife, everyone knew that co-wife was just a nice-sounding term for a concubine. Only in my past life did I believe him, foolishly agreeing out of gratitude for Rosaline saving his life. In just 3 days, Rosaline would appear. That is how it had happened before. She would show up, claiming she had survived the fall. He would explain to me, "As everyone knows from the ceremony, Rosaline is the official wife, and you are the co-wife. It is just a title. You are both my wives on equal footing." But from then on everyone in the estate would only address Rosaline as Madam. She would be the one to attend social events. I would become a concubine, a laughingstock, the legitimate daughter of the Grand Tutor, a joke throughout the capital. I lifted my veil, meeting his surprised gaze, and looked at the memorial tablet. Reborn, how could I let him deceive me again? I turned to the Minister of Rights, who was present, and asked with a troubled expression, "Your Excellency, this is a matter of great importance. Forgive me, but I dare not make this decision. The marriage between the Grand Tutor's family and the Marquis of Wuan was decreed by the Emperor. If the Marquis is to marry a memorial tablet as his official wife, and I am to be a co-wife, would that not be defying an imperial edict, an act of deceiving the Emperor?" My words made everyone remember. Yes, this marriage had been personally decreed by the Emperor, and now the Marquis was saying he wanted to marry a memorial tablet. The Minister of Rights thought for a moment. According to the Emperor's decree, Miss Zhang is the Marquise of Wuan, the official wife. If the Marquise wishes to marry this Rosaline, it would be improper. I saw from the corner of my eye that Minister Liu's face was turning pale. I sneered inwardly. His little scheme had failed. He must be heartbroken for his illegitimate daughter. I looked at Julian with a troubled expression. "My lord, I am afraid the imperial edict is difficult to defy. Perhaps after we are married, we can bring Miss Rosaline into the household as a concubine. That way, she would still be part of the Julian family. She must have been a kind woman to save you. She wouldn't mind the title. I will tell her before her spirit tablet that there is no distinction between us. She would surely agree." Julian's face darkened, and he was about to argue. I cut him off. "But if all that is required is for her to enter the Julian family, I have another way. She wouldn't have to be a concubine, and she could still be an official wife." "What way?" he asked, a hopeful look on his face. I smiled faintly. "I heard your brother died in battle at the age of 18, unmarried. Why not betroth Miss Rosaline to your brother? She would be his official wife. It would be a perfect match. Your brother would have company in the afterlife." "At my words," he shouted. "No." I stared at him. "Why not? Do you not want Miss Rosaline to enter the Julian family?" He retorted. "She was the one who saved me. I promised to marry her. How can I go back on my word?" Really, I thought. We were betrothed since childhood. He said he would marry me upon his victorious return. Yet he went back on his word and fell for another woman, even plotting against me for her sake. I looked at him with an innocent expression. "I was just thinking that you and Miss Rosaline only met once. I just wanted her to have the title of an official wife." The matriarch, Julian's mother, spoke up. "I think Isabel is right. Your brother died unmarried. It would be fitting for this Rosaline to marry his spirit tablet. They would have each other for company in the afterlife." The guests all nodded. "A good suggestion. It would be 2 weddings in one. The debt of life is repaid, and the eldest Julian son will have a wife and company in the afterlife." I watched as his face grew darker. I wanted to see how he would bring his beloved back to life after marrying her to his dead brother. Even if she did come back, she would be a widow. The matriarch made the decision. "So it is settled. Men, bring out the eldest young master's memorial tablet. Let him be married to Miss Rosaline. Today is truly a day of double blessings for the Marquis of Wuan's estate." His brother's tablet was quickly brought out. A maid took Rosaline's tablet, ready for the ceremony. "Stop the ceremony," it was Julian's voice. "My lord." It was a woman's delicate voice. I turned, of course. It was Rosaline, who had rushed over after hearing the news. When he returned to the capital, he had secretly settled her in a small alley, waiting for her to appear after she had officially become the Marquise. I had remembered the address from my past life, and had my brother go there. He had deliberately spoken loudly outside her courtyard about the plan to marry her to Julian's brother's tablet, making sure the neighbors all heard and gossiped. When Rosaline heard, she panicked. This was not what she and Julian had planned. She was supposed to marry him, not his brother. How could she become the Marquise then? Everyone was staring at her. Julian was flustered. What are you doing here? I stood beside him in my wedding gown, a perfect match, which made Rosaline's eyes burn with jealousy. She stumbled in. My lord, I am Rosaline. I did not die. With that, she fell into his arms, crying pitifully. I was rescued by a kind person. I rushed all the way to the capital and finally found you. He looked moved, then turned to me. Isabel, Rosaline is not dead. It would be wrong to marry her to my brother. It would ruin her. Perhaps I could take her as a co-wife. He had finally said it, tearing away his hypocritical mask. My face turned pale, and I took a few steps back. My lord, our marriage was decreed by the emperor, and on our wedding day you tell me you want to take a co-wife. You are not only disrespecting the Grand Tutor's family, but also the emperor. Miss Rosaline, it takes over a month to travel from the border to the capital by horse. How did you, a weak woman, manage to travel as fast as the army, arriving only 3 days after their return? She was taken aback by my question and stammered, unable to answer. Finally, she looked at him with teary eyes. My lord, have I done something wrong? It was just that a kind merchant was heading to the capital and gave me a ride. I was just so anxious to see you. I didn't mean to intrude. I looked at her. Then why did you come to the capital to find the Marquis, to see if his wounds had healed, or to have him repay your kindness by marrying you? But he said he only promised to marry you because he was afraid you would be a lonely ghost. Now that you are alive and well, you should be able to find a good husband, so you won't be without offerings after you die. Isn't that right? My words made the guests look at her strangely. Right wasn't the reason for marrying her tablet to give her a place in the ancestral hall. Now that she was alive, why was she here? Rosaline could no longer bear the stares and backed away. She looked at him with teary eyes. My lord, with that, her face turned pale, and she fainted. He caught her and roared at me. Isabel, you are a lady of a noble family. How can you be so rude to my savior? Rosaline is alone. It is only natural that she would come to me for help. She is an orphan with no one to rely on. What else could she do? Can you not even give her a place to stay? I looked at him with a hurt expression. My lord, on our wedding day, you first wanted to marry a memorial tablet, and then this woman shows up. You can't blame me for having my doubts. But you didn't even try to find out the truth before you scolded me. In my past life, a month after Rosaline moved in, she was diagnosed as 2 months pregnant. By that calculation, she was already a month pregnant now. He was at a loss for words. I didn't mean to scold you, I was just... Tears rolled down my cheeks, interrupting him. No matter what, Miss Rosaline is your savior. We should call a doctor to check on her. A weak woman traveling with a merchant from the border to the capital, she must not have been well taken care of. I hope she is not ill. My words were loaded. A single woman traveling with a merchant for over a month. It was bound to raise questions. The doctor arrived quickly. After a careful examination, he said, "Nothing serious. The young lady is just pregnant and fainted from emotional distress. I will prescribe some medicine to calm the fetus, and she will be fine." At his words, the room fell silent. Rosaline was pregnant. Julian's face lit up. Is that true? I covered my mouth and shrieked. My lord, Why are you so happy? Miss Rosaline must have been defiled by some villain to be with child. You must seek justice for her. Rosaline, who had just come to, heard this, and immediately threw herself into his arms. My lord, I have not been. He glared at me. Shut up. Impossible. Rosaline is pure, I muttered, but loud enough for everyone to hear. But the doctor said she is a month pregnant, and this month, wasn't she traveling with that merchant? Then whose child is it? It must be the merchant's. We should find him and question him. The guests also began to whisper. A month pregnant after traveling with a merchant from the border. Tease K. I knew it. How could a woman dare to travel from the border to the capital alone? It was a honey trap. Such a woman should be drowned in a pig cage, to have relations with a man before marriage, and even become pregnant. Julian's face grew darker. The child in Rosaline's belly is mine, he declared. The room fell silent. I looked at him in shock. My lord, what are you saying? How is that possible? Although Miss Rosaline is your savior, the Marquise's bloodline cannot be confused. I know you want to repay your debt, but you cannot just claim a child as your own. Miss Rosaline, don't be afraid. Just describe the villain, and we will surely bring him to justice. Rosaline looked at me, her face pale, and fell to her knees before me with a thud. Madam, the child in my belly is the Marquise. I beg you to let me into the household. I covered my mouth and backed away, shaking my head. No, I don't believe it. You only just met. How could you be carrying his child? You just arrived in the capital. You haven't seen the Marquis in so long. How could you be a month pregnant with his child? He stood up abruptly. Rosaline and I are in love. I kept it from you. We traveled together from the border to the capital. The child in her belly is mine. He looked at me with an apologetic but firm expression. Isabel, Rosaline is a simple woman. She will not compete with you for favor after she moves in. Can you let her in? Rosaline also looked at me with a pitiful expression, her eyes pleading. Madam, the Marquise and I are truly in love. We had no other choice. I just want to be with the Marquis. I just want to be with the man I love. I stared at them, my voice laced with sarcasm. What a pair of star-crossed lovers. Marquis, you haven't told me a single truth from the beginning. You traveled with her, yet you lied to me about marrying a memorial tablet, wanting to make her your official wife. What was your intention? She has been alive and well all this time, yet you tried to trick me into letting her into the household. Once the marriage was complete, she would appear and rightfully become the Marquise, while I became a co-wife. One moment you say she is a helpless orphan, the next you say you are in love. I can't tell what is true and what is false. But I know one thing is true. You, the Marquis of Wuan, have been deceiving me from the very beginning, all to bring this woman into your home, to do such a shameless thing for her, to make a fool of all the guests today, to make them witnesses to your lies. Since you have gone to such lengths to marry her, then I will grant your wish. I took the phoenix crown that had been sent to the Grand Tutor's estate as a betrothal gift and threw it on the ground. Pearls and gems scattered everywhere. Like this marriage. This marriage is off. You, Julian, Isabel, will not marry you. At my words. His face changed. This is an imperial decree, how can you not marry me? Just because you have to share me with one more woman, you are being so aggressive. This is not the behavior of a noble lady from the capital. With such a petty attitude, how can you be the mistress of this household? If you break this engagement on your own, the Grand Tutor will not allow you to be so willful. He used my father to pressure me. Isabel, well done. Father is here to take you home. A stern and deep voice came from the back of the crowd. The crowd parted. It was my father and brother. He looked at Julian with anger. The Marquis of Wuan's actions today are known throughout the capital. My grand tutor's family's daughter will not be so humiliated. Tomorrow, I will go to the palace and explain to the emperor. This marriage is off. Julian hurried forward. Father-in-law, it was just a misunderstanding. It was my fault for making Isabel angry. I will apologize to her right now and make it up to her. My brother blocked him. Marquise, my sister and you have not yet completed the ceremony. My father is not your father-in-law. Since you have not yet completed the ceremony, and you have a new love for whom you have caused such a scene, we are willing to withdraw from this marriage. The wedding hall, the phoenix crown, and the embroidered gown are all here. It is a perfect opportunity. Why don't you get married right away? So your beloved's child will have a legitimate name and not be born illegitimate. But please return our family's betrothal documents so we can officially end this engagement. The matriarch spoke up. Grand Tutor Jiang, my son was in the wrong. He deceived your family and hurt Isabel. I will discipline him severely. But this marriage was decreed by the emperor. To break it off like this would be a slap in the emperor's face. I thought of my past life, when I had died of illness in that remote courtyard. The matriarch had been celebrating her birthday, holding Rosaline's son, enjoying her family, and had never once spoken up for me. I would never let myself return to that situation. I spoke with tears in my eyes, a look of grievance on my face. Father, I want to go home. I don't want to marry the Marquis of Wuan. My father looked at me. All right, father and brother will take you home. Then he turned to Julian and flicked his sleeve. Marquis, tomorrow at court, we will have our say. For your own selfish desires, you deceived my family, and even had a child with this woman. You have disgraced yourself. The guests pointed and whispered, Who is this woman, to have so bewitched the Marquise? She is clearly not from a good family. These vixens are the best at seducing men. Otherwise, how could she have stolen a marriage decreed by the emperor? The Minister of Revenue, Minister Liu, finally spoke up. That Miss Rosaline looks so delicate. She doesn't seem like that kind of person. Perhaps they are truly in love. A pair of pitiable lovers. He sighed. I looked at him with scorn. He had a reputation for being a devoted husband. His wife had been unable to have children, yet he had never taken a concubine, only remaining with her. A fact that was the envy of many. He was a model husband in the capital, but he had a mistress outside, whom he had met during his youth. He had rekindled their romance while on an assignment at the border, and had set her up in a separate residence. They had a daughter, Rosaline, who was now grown, and his wife was still in the dark. In that case, I would do him a favor and help his wife. I smiled faintly and looked at him. Minister Liu is so compassionate. Perhaps you find Miss Rosaline familiar. You know, now that I look at her, she does bear a striking resemblance to you. I covered my mouth. Could she be a relative? Everyone looked. It was true. Rosaline's features were very similar to his. He was flustered. Miss Zhang, watch your words. How could I be related to Miss Rosaline? I murmured. I just noticed the resemblance, and she has a red birthmark on the back of her hand, just like you. At my words, his wife rushed forward and grabbed Rosaline's hand. Sure enough, there was a red birthmark. Her brow furrowed. She turned to him and snapped, Sebastian, when we got married, you told me that all the direct descendants of your family have a birthmark like this. Tell me, what is your relationship with this hussy? He was flustered. My dear, don't listen to Miss Zhang's nonsense. How could I have any relationship with Miss Rosaline? His wife looked at him. If you have no relationship, why did you speak up for her? His face turned red. My dear, I am devoted to you, How could I do anything to wrong you? Don't overthink it. I just felt sorry for her. Besides, I haven't left your side since we got married. How could I do anything to wrong you? But my father interjected, not necessarily. 17 years ago, Minister Liu spent a year supervising at the border. This young lady looks to be about 15 or 16. The timing adds up, and the resemblance is quite striking. He was furious. I am not that kind of person. I am devoted to my wife. How could I do anything to wrong her? I have only ever loved my wife. No other woman exists in my eyes. Just because she looks a little like me, you are throwing mud at me. My dear, I swear, I have only ever touched you. If I am lying, may I be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. His wife looked smug, but her words were generous. If she is related to you, we can just bring her into the family. I am not a petty person. We have no children. I am not unreasonable. If you have someone you fancy, you can just bring her into the household. Hearing this, Rosaline's eyes lit up. She suddenly grabbed his robe. Father, since Madame is so virtuous, does that mean I can enter the household? At her words, his wife's face changed, and his turned pale. Nonsense. Who is your father? His wife slapped him hard. Sebastian, you dare to deceive me. So this is your daughter. And I felt guilty all this time for not having children, letting my father pave the way for your career. I never thought you would have a daughter this big with another woman outside. How could you do this to me, to the Liu family? You, a country bumpkin, a poor scholar who climbed up by marrying into our family. You dare to cheat on me. With that, she slapped him several times, left and right. His face was already red and swollen, a pathetic sight. Rosaline was terrified and hid in Julian's arms. His wife pushed him away forcefully. You dare to have a mistress and an illegitimate child behind my back. I want a divorce. Get out of my house. With that, she stormed off. He glared at Rosaline, furious. Look what you've done, she whimpered. She was the one who said she would allow your children into the household if you had any. How was I to know, father? What do we do now? He flicked his sleeve. You fool, you are useless. With that, he hurried after his wife. My dear, let me explain. The grand drama had come to an end. I turned to Julian. What a clever scheme, Marquise. So she is the minister's daughter. A grand plan indeed, a pity. Now Miss Rosaline doesn't even have a clean background. She is an illegitimate daughter, and the child in her belly, when it is born, will also be illegitimate. How pitiful. With that, I looked at my father. Father, let's go home. The events of the Marquis of Wuan's wedding spread throughout the capital overnight. The next day, when my parents and I went to the palace, even the Emperor and Empress had heard. The Empress was disgusted. I thought the Marquis of Wuan was a young hero, a good match for Isabel. I never thought he would be the type to get involved with an illegitimate daughter and even get her pregnant. Your Majesty, if the engagement is not cancelled, it would be a great injustice to the Grand Tutor's daughter. Isabel is a woman I myself have praised. How can she be so sullied? And the Marquis, knowing it was an imperial decree, still dared to set up a scheme to deceive Isabel. It is despicable. Minister Liu was also involved. Such an act should be severely punished by your Majesty. Otherwise, it will only encourage such behavior, and that Rosaline, with no sense of propriety, getting involved with an engaged man and becoming pregnant, and then joining in the deception. Such a person with a twisted mind cannot be an official wife. Even as a concubine, she would be a disgrace. The Emperor nodded. So be it. The engagement between the Marquis of Wuan's family and the Grand Tutor's family is cancelled. The Marquis of Wuan has behaved improperly and is to be confined to his home for reflection, with his salary suspended for 6 months. The Minister of Revenue, Sebastian, has shown a lack of virtue and is to be suspended from his post, pending further observation. The Marquis, who had just arrived at the palace to plead his case, heard the Emperor's decree and returned to his estate, dejected. The capital was abuzz. Because Minister Liu's wife was seeking a divorce, a lot of old stories came to light. It turned out that the house he lived in was part of his wife's dowry. When he had married her after passing the imperial exams, he had lived off her dowry. Now with the divorce, when his wife presented the dowry list, he realized that he only had his annual salary of 300 taels, which was not even enough for his social expenses, let alone buying a house. He had hoped she would be swayed by their old feelings, but her family threw him out, with only a few changes of clothes and 100 taels of silver. He could only rent a small courtyard in an alley, with an old servant to take care of him. When Rosaline and Julian arrived, he was in a state of despair. Julian had no choice but to give him more money for furniture and maids to get him settled. Rosaline cried, "Father, even if you divorce your wife, you are still a minister. Many people will still want to curry favor with you. What is there to be afraid of? Now I can openly acknowledge you as my father." She thought this would elevate her status to that of a minister's legitimate daughter, and no one would dare to look down on her. But she was wrong. The Empress's opinion of her had somehow leaked out of the palace. The noble families all knew she had a twisted mind and was unfit to be an official wife. A person despised by the Empress. How could the noble ladies dare to associate with her? When she attended a tea party for the capital's noble ladies as a minister's legitimate daughter and was slighted, she finally understood the gravity of the situation. The daughter of the Minister of Rights glanced at her and said mockingly, "Today's tea party is for the unmarried sisters of the capital. Is Miss Rosaline attending as the Marquise's concubine, or as Minister Liu's legitimate daughter? If a concubine, then you cannot enter. It is against the rules. If as a minister's legitimate daughter, you have a ruined reputation and are pregnant, would you not tarnish the rest of us? Please leave." Rosaline gritted her teeth. "I will be marrying the Marquis in a few days. You are only looking down on me because you want to support that Isabel. My husband is the Marquis of Wuan, and my father is the Minister of Revenue. How dare you?" Someone uncovered their mouth and laughed. "She has some nerve. Everyone knows the Minister of Revenue has been suspended. It is not even certain if he can keep his post. Yet she dares to boast about it. And she is only marrying the Marquis as a concubine. I've never seen such an arrogant concubine. It is a disgrace." Rosaline shrieked. "Nonsense. The Marquis will only marry me as his official wife. She saw me enter the garden and sneered. So it was you. No wonder these people are being so sarcastic. You are the one behind this, making them bully me." I took a step back disdainfully. "I am bullying you. What is your status to be worthy of our bullying? We were raised with strict rules, learning propriety, righteousness, integrity, and shame, as well as the 4 arts. Every step we take must be proper. You, a shameless person who lost your virtue before marriage, stole another's fiancé, and became pregnant in secret. How can you sit with us? You may have no shame, but we do. We will not lower ourselves to be associated with you." "Exactly. It would lower our status. How dare she? I heard the Marquis of Wuan has no intention of marrying her, and is looking for a match elsewhere." I fanned myself, and looked at her. "What, Miss Rosaline? You don't know? Your future husband went to the temple today with the matriarch to pray, and he also met with the young lady of another family. I heard it is the legitimate daughter of the General of the West, a perfect match. If you want to be a concubine, you'll have to see if the General's daughter agrees." Everyone burst out laughing. Rosaline clutched her belly and shrieked, "Impossible, Isabel! You are just trying to anger me. I won't fall for it. I am carrying the Marquise's child. He said he would give me and our son a legitimate name. I will go and see for myself. When I become the Marquise, you will all have to bow to me. We will see then." With that, she and her maid rushed off. I knew she was going to the temple. I wasn't lying. My mother had just returned from there, and had happened to see the two families meeting, so she had specifically come to tell her. When Rosaline arrived at the temple, the two matriarchs were having a pleasant conversation. Her maid whispered, "Miss," I asked the servant, "the Marquis and the General's daughter are admiring the peach blossoms in the back mountain." Rosaline's eyes were red. "He lied to me. I am carrying his child, yet he wants to marry another woman." Because the matter of the Marquis being reprimanded by the Emperor had become a big deal, he knew the Emperor and Empress were displeased with him over the marriage. He didn't dare to marry Rosaline, and had immediately started looking for a suitable match. The General of the West was a favorite of the Emperor. If he could marry the General's daughter, it would be beneficial for his future. He was admiring the peach blossoms with the General's daughter in the back mountain, the two of them getting along wonderfully, when Rosaline found him. She stood under a peach tree in a white dress, tears streaming down her face. "My lord, are you abandoning me and our child?" The General's daughter's face changed. "My lord, who is she?" His face darkened. "Just a disfavored concubine from my household. I will deal with her." The General's daughter smiled faintly. "So she is a concubine, but my lord, she is also carrying your child. She must be quite favored then. Forgive me, but I must take my leave today. We will meet again if fate allows." With that, she and her maid left. He turned and glared at Rosaline, slapping her hard. "You bitch! You came here specifically to ruin my chances." She clutched her face, looking at him in disbelief. "You hit me. You said you would marry me, and now you are trying to marry someone else behind my back. I am telling you, Julian, if you dare to abandon me, I will take my child and kill myself at the gates of your estate." He was trembling with anger. "In this capital, who would marry you as an official wife? You should be grateful to even be a concubine in the Marquise's household. If you cause any more trouble, don't blame me for being ruthless." With that, he pushed her away and chased after the General's daughter. Rosaline fell to the ground, crying her heart out, but she was not one to be trifled with. Back in the capital, Julian had somehow managed to placate the General's daughter, and the two families had decided on an engagement. On the day of the betrothal gifts, Rosaline waited until the crowd of onlookers had grown. Then, with her slightly showing belly, she knelt pitifully at the gates of the General's estate. She cried out, "I, Rosaline, beg Miss Lee to give me and my unborn child a place to stay. I ask for nothing more than to be able to serve the Marquise." The familiar scene made even me, who had just arrived to offer my congratulations, stop to watch. The General's family was furious. Miss Lee rushed out and kicked her over. "Rosaline, I have inquired about you. You were the one who ruined the Marquise's wedding with the Grand Tutor's daughter. Now you want to try the same trick on me? Do you think I am as good? Tempered as Miss Zhang? You are dreaming, men. She dares to cause trouble. Beat her and throw her out." The servants of the General's estate were all formidable. They rushed forward and started beating her. A scream was heard. "Help, my child!" The servants dispersed. Rosaline was curled up in a ball, and there was blood on the ground. She had been beaten until she miscarried. She was carried back to the Marquise's estate. Julian returned late that night. He could only comfort her. "Ying Ying has a straightforward personality. You are a little older than her, so just let her be. She is, after all, the mistress of the household. You will have to be patient. It is for the best that the child is gone. After Yingying moves in and gives birth to a legitimate son, I will naturally give you another child to raise." With that, he happily went to discuss the wedding date with the matriarch. On the day of his wedding to Li Yingying, she was uncharacteristically docile. After Yingying had entered the bridal chamber, she went to kneel and offer her tea. "Greetings to madam. It was my fault before. Please forgive me. From now on, I will respect you as the mistress, and will not overstep my bounds." Yingying looked at the now defanged Rosaline with satisfaction, took the tea, and drank it in one gulp. "It is good that you are so obedient. After I give birth to a legitimate son, I will consider letting you have a child for the Marquis you may leave." That night, Julian entered the bridal chamber, drank the wedding wine with Yingying, and fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, the people of the capital were woken by screams. The Marquis of Wuan's estate was on fire because the wind had suddenly changed direction. The fire in the main courtyard was raging. By the time the servants discovered it, they didn't dare to rush in to save anyone. It was strange that with such a fire, the Marquis and his wife did not wake up and were burned to ashes. And Rosaline, in a remote courtyard, laughed. Good that it burned. It is all over. In the afterlife, we can settle our scores." With that, she hanged herself, leaving only a suicide note saying she had set the fire because Julian had betrayed her and she wanted them to die together. When I heard the news, the Marquis of Wuan's estate had already been reduced to ashes. The matriarch, in shock, fell ill and was taken back to her ancestral home by her clan. The estate was ruined overnight, and I was embroidering my future wedding dress, listening to my mother. "This is the man your father has chosen for you. He is this year's third-place scholar. Speaking of which, our two families have been friends for generations." My mind was already elsewhere. This year's third-place scholar. He must be very handsome. I should go and see for myself. The spring sunlight was just right. There was still plenty of time. I could slowly enjoy being with my parents. Such a time was the best.